So I want to make a video about this story, specifically this issue that's going on in Canada right now. And in Canada, there's not a lot of talk, but a decent amount of talk, specifically in Toronto. And I know Justin Trudeau seems to bring it up whenever another one of his scandals come out. But it's this they want to increase gun control because gun crime is a big issue. And basically, the gist of the story is Toronto City Council was voting on the gun control issues and whatnot, and not one of them, not one of the members of City Council, any of the people they had in, the staff, the experts they brought in. Again, I don't understand how you can be an expert on the issue and not know the most basic aspect of it. But regardless of it, they didn't know. Um, they didn't know what was required to legally acquire a handgun in Canada before they voted on it. And again, regardless of your position on the issue, I don't care what your position is. If people don't even know the most basic aspects of what goes into buying a gun legally, they shouldn't be. I mean, they can have an opinion, yeah, but they shouldn't be involved in any way, shape, or form in the legal process of increasing or decreasing gun control. And again, regardless of your position on the topic, how can you in the right mind say that someone who has the least, like someone who literally isn't even from Canada, doesn't know anything about Canadian gun laws, knows just as much as these people? So it's absolutely crazy that this is going on. And like I've talked about before, increasing gun control doesn't work. The tweet below this, if you go look at the CCFR, shows that at a federal level, firearms homicides are actually down, but I'm pretty sure in Toronto they're up, but at a federal level they're down. And 8 out of 10 of those are gang related. And of those, 85% were committed with a handgun, which means, first of all, every one of those people is committing something that is at mandatory minimum 6 months in jail. Because if you have a loaded handgun in public, it's at the very least a mandatory minimum 6 month charge. They probably don't have number one, they probably don't have a PAL to begin with, so that's a charge. Even if they did have a PAL, it's highly illegal. They wouldn't have a ATT. It wouldn't be locked. It's loaded. You can't have loaded mags and ammo together when you're at least I don't think you can when you're transferring a restricted firearm. At the very least, it can't be loaded. It has to have a trigger lock or a secure locking device, and it has to be locked in a case or whatever you're bringing it in. And obviously, none of those things have been fulfilled to commit a murder or even have a gun in public in the first place. So, advocating for increasing gun control makes no sense in Canada, because someone who commits a murder with a handgun is already doing something that would get them locked in jail for at least a year. And if that's already not enough, and not to mention killing someone is a much harsher crime, or robbing someone, but if that's not enough to deter people from committing a crime, what is? Seriously, what is? They already have the gun illegally to begin with. Even if you increase gun control in Canada to the point to where it's impossible to get a gun legally, there's tens of millions of handguns, maybe even hundreds of millions at this point, of handguns in the US. So people are just going to bring them across the border. The other thing too is that gun control is the one issue that one of the issues where I think the general public is the most clueless on, because at the very least, people have some small amount of knowledge in pretty much every issue. Now, generally they're misinformed and propagandized, but gun control is one that people in Canada were completely brainwashed into thinking that our gun control is lower than the States because our gun control is more. But in reality, our gun crime has been very steady over time. If you look at our gun homicide rates, or just homicide rates, using just gun homicide rates is usually misleading. They're actually very steady. So in essence, our gun control laws had almost no effect on our homicide rate. But in the states, you look at constitutional carry states have low, and constitutional carry means, if you don't know, you can carry anyone can carry a handgun without a permit as long as they're legally allowed to own that handgun in the first place. Um, if you look at the states with the most restrictive carry permits, they don't have a lower homicide rate than the constitutional carry states. The amount of guns in the states has doubled over the last about 25 years, but yet the homicide rate has actually gone down rather significantly. So, it's a classic correlation, not causation thing. And the thing that bothers me too is that people think that because they understand correlation causation, that means they know everything, but they really don't, because the states has a high homicide rate because they have a lot more gang members, they have a lot more minorities, and they're close to a third world country, basically, or at least in a lot of areas a third world country. In some areas it's not, but and they're that much closer to the Central America and whatnot. So that's another issue in and of itself. But the main takeaway I wanted to talk about here is that gun control, number one, it's not going to do anything, and number two, if people are willing to advocate for legal change when they literally have no idea whatsoever what they're talking about, and again, you can't debate me on that. It's if you don't even know what it takes to get a restricted firearm in the first place, which, if you don't know, because people probably have this idea that gun control in Canada isn't that strict. They think that the U.S. is anyone can get a gun whenever, wherever, no questions asked. In Canada, there's non-restricted, restricted, and prohibited. Those are the three classes of firearms. Non-restricted, to get a non-restricted and a restricted PAL is a similar process. The only difference is to get a restricted PAL, you have to have a gun range membership, and then you have to take an extra course, which the course is about a 1-day course. It usually takes around 8 hours, and then I believe the restricted course is like an extra 3 or 4 hours on top of that. So it's pretty much the same thing. You just go over. There's obviously different laws regarding it. So the firearm safety aspect is the exact same. They're guns. You do the same thing. Like, you don't point it at people. Assume it's loaded. Only point it at like I say, assume it's loaded. Always use the safety when you can. All the basic gun safety tips. And then restricted. The laws on top of that are, number one, non-restricted firearms you can shoot, in the woods, in your backyard, if you're in the country, all that kind of stuff. You can take it hunting. You can, the laws are rather, I wouldn't say loose, but compared to restricted firearms, there are restricted firearms. You need an ATT, which is a piece of paper that says you can bring your gun from your house to the range. You need to keep it locked at all times in a case, and it needs a secure locking device. A non-restricted firearm just needs to be locked up or have a secure locking device. So the amount of the storage requirements are more on a restricted firearm. You need a piece of paper from the government that says that you can take that firearm to and from the range. You also need to have the range membership, so it's going to cost you more. And not to mention that, if you want to take it to a different range, you're going to need a range membership. You're going to need to get an ATT for that too. And those are just things off the top of my head. There's a lot of things that go into having a restricted firearm. The permitting process is going to be a little bit harder. All this kind of stuff. To buy a restricted firearm, you can't just walk out of this. Like, if you buy a non-restricted firearm, you can go buy the firearm, walk out, good to go within 20-30 minutes. You got to fill out maybe 5 or 10 minutes of paperwork. A restricted firearm, you can't walk out of it the same day. You're gonna have to fill out more paperwork, and like I say, you can't have it the same day. You're gonna have to get a temporary ATT to take it home, and all this kind of stuff. You're gonna have to get it registered. That's the other thing too, is that restricted firearms are registered, so the government knows where every one of them is. At least, in essence, they know where the ones that they don't really need to know are. They know about the guy, your uncle or whatever, who wants to go shoot his handgun, on the weekend. They don't know where the gangbanger's handgun is, which is the ones that they really want to know. But, like I say, so basically that's what it takes in essence. Don't quote me on it though, but like I say, that's in essence what it takes. But these people don't even know the most basic of basic things, and that's the problem when it comes to the gun debate. Is you have people who, like, political debates in general, you have people who are uneducated, but the gun debate takes it to an even further level, because at least the political debate, you have people who are generally on one side or the other. The gun debate, you have a lot of people who are, if you're on the left, you're almost always for gun control. If you're on the right, you even have a lot of people who don't even understand the topic, and they think that, Canada's gun control is, roughly what it should be, and if anything, it should be stricter. But the data doesn't show that. Like, the data does not show that. Like I say, 8 out of every 10 gang-related homicides were committed with a firearm, and of these, 85% were committed with a handgun. And again, those are from StatsCan, so they're not biased. And like I say, 85% of those were committed with a handguns. And again, if you're a gang member, you're not a PAL holder, because if you're a gang member, you're not going to be able to get a PAL. Because, for the simple reason, if you're a gang member, it's likely that you're going to have a criminal record at one point or the other. And if you have one before, well, you're not going to get it. And if you have one during it, well, guess what? If you have a PAL, even a non-restricted PAL, your name is automatically swung through a database every day, and a criminal background database. And if you get arrested and you get charged with something that's severe enough that would warrant getting your guns taken away, where the cops are the cops already have you, but if you're in a different area or whatnot, you're going to get your guns taken. So that's the one thing about these people, that in the States, they want to increase background checks. And in Canada, every gun owner gets a background check every day. And yet that's still not enough. So that's the one thing that about the gun debate, is that for all the people that are like, well, we just need a little bit more and then that's enough. It's never enough. Like you say, you have these people that they just want to register guns. Now they want to ban them. And like you say, in the States, they just want increased background checks. But guess what? To do what they want, you would have to have a de facto registry. And if you have a de facto registry, well, then guns can be taken by the government or by the police, whatever you want to call it. So basically, to sum it all up in this video, don't trust the government. Don't trust these people. Even if you're for the amount of gun control that's in Canada, or you want more, why in the world? Like, no one in the right mind would trust these people. Like, educate yourself and do this kind of stuff, because to understand what's actually going on in this issue, for these issues, you really have to go out of your way, because the data that just comes across you without you really trying is almost always propaganda. So you need to really go out of your way, educate yourself, and find out what's really going on. And you'll generally notice that when you find out what's really going on, well, it's not what you're being told. So I'll leave it there. If you liked the video, make sure to hit that like and subscribe, and stay tuned for more.